I am Mr. Also Didn't Leave Coke in the White House, and I'm here with Didn't Leave Coke in the White House, Mr. David Darnell. I'm Kevin Hoare, and it is the 10th of July, and there's a lot of fun stories here today. We're going to get to that one in a second with the White House, but this one in Portland sort of caught my attention. A PETA truck has been stolen in Portland, and it's a truck.
You're not talking about the little pocket thing that you put stuff in, not that PETA?
No. This is you mean Pez? Yeah, no. PETA is the PETA is like little bread thingies. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. They have a truck that I guess it just has stuff on the outside that makes it look like it's an actual truck carrying chickens. They call it the Hell on Wheels truck. It's supposed to look like images of a bunch of chickens crammed into crates heading for slaughter. And they're trying to get people to stop eating chicken. They ride around town, but in a
Parked in front of Popeyes.
It must have been, but in a city where nearly every vehicle of every kind, including vehicles that are out trying to help homeless people, get stolen, often by street criminals trying to feed a drug habit. This one has now fallen victim to that, and
they're just trying to get a house. That's all.
They're just looking for houses.
Yeah,
they
want shelter. That's all they want.
If
they just had shelter, then they wouldn't be unsheltered.
Yes, and they would stop doing fentanyl and meth immediately.
All day.
Yeah. All day. Well, so PETA, which I think we've liked to refer to, we're both members of another PETA, People Eating Tasty Animals.
Yeah.
That's we've done that one, but
animals last night.
Exactly. Says here they are offering a $5,000 reward plus a year's supply of vegan chicken. Do they really want the truck back? If that's like that's the award.
They think one of their own stole it, or what?
It could be. I mean, it's like, it must have been a vegan homeless dude. Very particular.
Yeah.
Only does fentanyl as long as it's vegan fentanyl. And,
organic fentanyl.
But I mean, what if there was somebody that said
fair trade fentanyl?
Fair trade. Yes, exactly. Well, just think it. And they were like, well, I was going to bring it back. When I saw the $5,000 reward, but then you threatened me with a year's supply of vegan chicken. And I said, hell no, we're driving this around town and crashing it someplace. They'll probably find it all as a burnout Hulk north of Delta Park or something, people cooking meth over it or whatever. But
it couldn't happen to nicer zealots.
Exactly. Yeah, it just. And see, they're thinking back to the good old days when Portland was just a place that was weird, and you could protest about stuff all the time, and nothing would happen to the protesters because they're all, they all have our best interests at heart, and they're such good people, so much better than us. But it turns out that now it's not even safe for people to go and do wacky left-wing protests. It's just not. So
I guess I mean the unsheltered are just no respecter of political ideology, apparently. So if anybody knows who stole the truck, if you want to make some quick cash, I'll buy that sucker from you, and I'm going to stuff it full of chicken and give it back to him. Live chicken, not dead chicken.
Live chickens, yeah. So they have 8,000 live chickens running around on the streets of Portland.
Yeah, tell me you don't want to slaughter them.
I know. See, whoever stole this, it would be great if they had as good a sense of humor as you, David, because then this could really turn into a story that would gain national and international attention instead of being just a local truck theft issue. It could really
It'd make a great story, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, most of the cover it because it would be so counter narrative that they couldn't cover a pita truck stuffed full of chickens.
And all that matters, as we know, is the narrative. So
Right.
there you go. Well, I'm of course wearing the Let's Go Brandon hat tonight, and that's usually a sign that we are going to talk about President Brandon himself.
Right.
And apparently, the Democrats are getting a little alarmed at something that they've noticed about Joe Biden. What they've noticed is that
Really?
he's obviously senile, and it's they're I think it was Politico, the very Democrat leaning publication, online publication, has said that they think he really should be required to compete with some real candidates in the Democratic primary, because if he can't handle that, then he has no business being the candidate in the general election. And guess what else he doesn't have any business being? President of the United States.
Yeah. I could have got that one.
What?
I said I could have guessed that one. You got it right.
Well, but the Democrats actually think that they're more worried about whether he can compete in the election than whether he can do the job that he was supposedly elected to, supposedly, which, and here's some of the latest evidence of that. He has done something very strange. He went on, he was in an interview talking about what's going on with Ukraine and why they were supplying cluster bombs to Ukraine. And I think he is senile enough that he accidentally tells the truth sometimes. But unfortunately, it can be really bad for national security. What he did is he said, well, the reason why we're giving them the cluster munitions, even though they've been banned by about 100 other countries for use in war, and that's a separate debate, and I don't even know if I agree with the reasons why they banned it. But he said it's because America is running out of 155 millimeter artillery shells.
Oh, that's great.
Great news.
Hope we don't need them, Kevin.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't need them for anything. Of course not. It's just the only caliber of artillery that we actually use. And
we have to go buy them back from Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's right. We gave somebody something that we're going to buy back from them to make them rich, so that we can have the supply of shells that we actually already manufactured. I mean, that sounds like a Biden policy right there. And so the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition, but then we're running out of the same ammunition.
Apparently,
I don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to spin this, because he said something that, he gets the highest level intelligence briefings, or at least we think he does.
One would think.
One would think, which means that at any one moment in time, he could just blurt out
some sensitive information.
Yeah, like here's what one guy said.
We're going to Moscow next week.
Yeah, that's right. He said, does President Biden not care that our adversaries in communist China actually are listening? Like, Joe Biden hasn't figured out that maybe the Chinese Communist Party watches television and might notice that he has disclosed this information, which probably didn't make some people in Taiwan very happy to have this information revealed. Now, we've suspected it for a long time, but still, this guy, to the point, they've noticed he's senile and can't compete in an election campaign. I'm not sure he's able to uphold the minimum requirements for a commander-in-chief, which is that's the number one job a president has. There's other things that presidents can do that they have to get Congress to go along with, right? Like appropriations and laws, and supposed to faithfully execute the laws. But the only thing that lands almost solely on the plate of the president is the decisions of life and death, war and peace, fire a nuclear weapon or not. And then this is what happened. This guy did this the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how long till now we're out of cluster bombs. We're going to give them some nukes.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Come on.
Come on, man.
This stuff's old. You gotta use it. You gotta exercise it. You gotta, you can't just let it sit there.
Yeah, we need to prove that they work. We're sending them to Ukraine. Yeah, that won't upset the Russians at all.
We got new ones. We don't need them.
Well, so there is even more to this story, actually, of what's going on with the Biden White House. They have a real problem.
Did anybody tell the Bidens that you can get free straws in Multnomah County?
I know why. That's right. And
Or
so
are they gangster and use a rolled up 100?
They probably do that. Actually, they might even use several hundreds, because they had to do a lot of cash transactions, I'm sure, during the Hunter Biden business era.
Yeah.
May as well burn them up rather than let the feds get a hold of them by paying your taxes. So, but yeah, this White House cocaine story is really, really fascinating. First of all, it's become that they've changed 3 times where they said it has been found. And each time that they've updated the story with apparently the new and revised truth, it turns out that it's in a place that could only have been accessed by somebody who had authorization to be in the highest, most sensitive, secure areas of the White House.
Maybe the president, vice president.
Yeah. No, but we know that Vice President Giggles, she sticks to ganja. She smokes the big doobies. She already talked about that some time ago. So maybe she's not into this. But we do know somebody who frequents the White House. And in fact, they said that the Biden family wasn't in the White House the evening that this stuff was found. However, in fact, they had to revise that later and say, well, they were there until 6:30 p.m. of the day that the stuff was found.
There's a log of everybody that goes in and out of the White House.
And there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
There's cameras everywhere.
Yeah. You've been to the White House, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a log of you being at the White House.
Absolutely.
You don't get into the White House without somebody logging your name.
No, and also they have to know it just for security reasons who is present in the White House. So this is also not a close call. Like, they are going to know that the person who was in there was being looked after or watched or monitored or even protected by the Secret Service.
Yeah.
So it is just silly. They're obviously covering something up, and actually there might be a reason for them to cover this up that I don't know if it's hit the news yet, but I heard this one analyst say this. So this plea deal that he's been offered, Hunter Biden,
includes treatment.
You got to stay away from the drugs. Otherwise, your plea deal goes bye-bye, supposedly.
Yeah.
So if he did bring that stuff in there, then you could be almost sure that they're not going to bring charges or reveal that it was him. And I guess Karine Jean-Pierre, the highly diverse, unprecedented spokes idiot for Biden,
right?
She just lost her mind when somebody said, could these drugs belong to the Bidens? And she's like, it's so disrespectful. It's like, yeah. They have nothing to do with drugs. Nothing. Right?
Right.
The hours of video of him smoking crack.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Joe was in DC in the 80s. Joe was doing coke and everybody was in the 80s.
That's so disrespectful, David. So they constantly change the story, and that's how you know when the story is BS. I mean, any investigator of the most basic level knows that if you start looking into something and people are telling you something and the same person keeps changing the story, then they're lying about something, because they're not you don't have to keep figuring out what the truth is and changing it to whatever the truth is.
Yeah, no, you don't, because the Secret Service knows whose Coke it was. They know who was there, and they know everybody who is anywhere near any location that the Coke has, moved itself to. You know,
I'm just waiting. I'm just
and
waiting.
it's ridiculous. They're trying to sell this.
I am just waiting for them to blame it on somebody who hasn't been there for years, which they've blamed nearly everything on Trump that goes wrong during the Biden administration. Or maybe they'll blame it on Joe Biden.
It was Don Jr. Don Jr. left Coke in there. Just found it.
And so but maybe they'll blame it on the dog and then euthanize the dog and say, see, problem solved. Because that's what they did when the dog tripped Biden, and then all of a sudden the dog was dead a little while later. It's like, because he injured his foot. I mean, but that's not the only ones who seem to have a problem with getting their story straight. Apparently, the IRS whistleblowers, they're just blasting in the Hunter Biden case, the tax fraud case, for which he's not going to experience any penalty. Not to mention the fact that the illegal gun case and all that stuff. They're blasting the U.S. Attorney Weiss, who was the one heading up the investigation, because apparently he's making statements that conflict with each other. And it's between June 7th and June 30th. The guy can't get the story straight. So he's constantly changing his story. And I think they've got this U.S. attorney. Is he going to just let himself be the fall guy for someone else? Or is he going to come out and set the record straight? Because this guy's saying, well, I didn't have the authority to charge Hunter Biden. Then he says he did. And then Merrick Garland says he did, but then Merrick Garland says that he never authorized him to be a special prosecutor, which would have given him the authority. And so they keep changing the story with this plea deal that they struck, which was not just a plea deal to keep Hunter Biden out of jail, but it was also to keep them from being able, or anybody from being able to ask anything about Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, they're in overdrive as far as, trying to not answer any questions. It's just, I mean, can you imagine that in any part of your life, Kevin? Or can anybody listening imagine doing that in any part of your life to anyone, friends, family, workers, boss? I mean, you just, you just can't do that. You can't get away with that kind of, that level of deflection and obtuseness, if that's a word.
And of course, there's a video which has been going around which shows Biden talking with Dr. Jill, his wife, and they analyze her body language of how she's trying to facing away from Hunter Biden and out of reach. And Hunter Biden looks like he's tweaking. He's walking around, he's picking kids up, he's walking around, he's going he looks really, that kind of hyperactivity busy thing, and touching his head and doing weird stuff on a balcony. And it's at the point where they just can't hide. They can't hide the fact that Joe Biden's senile. They can't hide the fact that someone with the highest level access to the White House dropped cocaine in the White House. They can't hide that anymore. And they can't seem to hide the fact that they did everything they could to corrupt the legal system and cover up for this guy and for the president as well. So I think this is a house of cards that's falling apart now for them.
Well, I think the claw of the 2024 election will be coming into view, and will be grabbing Joe and taking him away.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if he sticks around, the latest he'll stick around is for when he finishes like fifth in New Hampshire. And there's no play to go beyond that, right? Because it's actually not possible to pretend like you're going to win after you get completely obliterated as an incumbent president in New Hampshire. Really?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of something else that's falling apart, apparently the entire set of policies that are being put forward to deal with homelessness and opioid addiction, it's turning into a complete disaster. And the latest example is Multnomah County, which is the county where Portland, the largest city in Oregon, is located, has decided to implement a policy of handing out tinfoil and straws to fentanyl smokers. And if you've seen any video, and there's plenty of video of this out there, of people smoking fentanyl, the way it works is they stick it in a piece of foil, the pill that has fentanyl in it, usually Vicodin or something like that, except it has this little stamp on it, and it's not real Vicodin. And they light it in the foil, and then they use a little straw to smoke the fumes from it. And the reason why Multnomah County is giving this to people who are addicted to fentanyl is they're calling it harm reduction. They are providing smoking supplies, which also includes glass pipes for smoking meth and crack. They also have what they call snorting kits, which is what you were talking about before. Don't the Bidens know that they could just go get free snorting kits in Multnomah County? And they say it's a part of a national effort, which they once at one time, if you recall, the Biden administration actually denied that they were doing this. Remember? Mm-hmm. And they said, "Oh no, we're not doing this." But they said they're trying to minimize the health consequences of drug use. In other words, they're trying to make smoking deadly drugs that make you psychotic and are highly addictive. They're trying to make it safer for you to do these drugs, so you can just stay out on the streets indefinitely. And then, of course, at some point, you happen to notice that they don't live in a home because this is what they're doing instead. They're just incapable of occupying a dwelling. It's very hard to do. And
it's almost impossible. I guarantee you, if you and I smoked fentanyl all day long, it would only be a very short matter of time before we did not have a home to live in.
That's right. Either by being kicked out of the one you're in, or simply being unable to.
My wife would kick us both out of our own houses. But you know, I think Angela's got the right take on this. Have you watched her PDX Real?
I haven't seen her talk about this one, but I can almost.
I think she's got the right. I think she's got the right take. You know, these people that get all of this taxpayer money for needle exchanges to for harm reduction. People aren't. They're not using needles anymore. They're smoking this stuff, and they're running out of customers. They need to cater to the customers so they can continue to get the funding. And I think that's what this is all about. I mean, it's just they're trying to stay relevant and try to stay in the public funding stream, so they're not a dinosaur. And I think that's what they're doing.
But Director Jessica Guernsey at the County Public Health in Multnomah County says that Multnomah County is just being an innovator in harm reduction, and that you and I are sensationalizing and misrepresenting in the public, in a media discourse, the nature of their work. Meanwhile, the mayor, who we know has had certainly his detractors, and has not been terribly impressive over his tenure as this problem has grown worse, actually totally disagrees with what Multnomah County is doing. He's changed his tone quite a bit. He actually tried, but then kind of backed off banning the smoking of fentanyl in public spaces. But he said in response to Multnomah County's decision, I adamantly oppose distributing paraphernalia to encourage using a drug that is the leading cause of death for Americans under 50 and responsible for 190 fatal doses a day in the U.S. He said this misguided approach also results in greater risk to public safety for those who simply want to enjoy our city without walking through a cloud of toxic smoke.
Well, yeah, and what about the seagulls and the sea turtles? They aren't. We outlawed straws, didn't we? Didn't they outlaw straws? You can't get a straw unless you ask for one. Some of the people went to those stupid ass paper straws. I remember getting those from Arby's in a milkshake. It's like, yeah, give me 4 more of those. That's how many it's going to take to get through this damn milkshake. Now, if you do, I guess you can drive through Arby's, get the stupid paper straw, go over to Multnomah County and get yourself a nice plastic straw and have your shake.
There you go. There you go. See, we've finally found a way to bring the private and the public sector together to solve a real problem, which is drinking a milkshake. Now, this is really one of the main points Wheeler makes here is our community would benefit more from the county using its funding to urgently increase treatment and sobering facilities rather than actively enabling this deadly epidemic. Where is he getting all this common sense from? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the real problem. It's not a homeless problem. It's not an unsheltered problem. It is a drug problem. What they really should do is just increase their funding, get rid of the damn straws and the tinfoil, and just build some facilities where they can bring all the people in and feed them an IV all day. And that way, that would solve the problem. They wouldn't overdose. They'd be high. They'd be unconsciously high, and they'd be sheltered. It would remind me a little bit of that big structure in the Matrix where all the humans are,
stored.
Got the attachment in their neck and
the thing in the back of their neck, and they just sit there and
I mean, that seems like the next step for this. It's just so ridiculous. It's just another, it's another way of extracting money out of the taxpayer. Create a problem, exacerbate the problem, and then get more money for the problem, pass it out to the NGOs and the nonprofits who will in turn return that money to the people that passed it out to them in the form of campaign contributions. And there is there's the circle.
Yeah, and I think also they end up using the money to control whether or not somebody deviates from the narrative. Ironically enough, even Democrats are starting to be forced to admit that fentanyl which has kind of become the dominant drug on the streets now.
Yeah, it's cheap.
It's cheap. You can get as much as you want across the southern border from Mexico using unlimited amounts of Chinese precursor chemicals that are provided, and they've even got a version of it called carfentanil, which is 100 times more powerful than regular fentanyl. So it's actually becoming cheaper and more potent. And there's a good article written by a guy that we had on this on the Captive Audience a few weeks ago. His name's Kevin Dahlgren, and he just details out what's happening. That fentanyl is wreaking havoc in America. There's an editorial in the Baker City Herald and this is Baker City, right? So this, we're not just talking about Portland here. It's just Portland's like the biggest, most obvious version, but they have passed a law in Salem that's made it a Class C felony to possess a misdemeanor if it's between 1 and 5 grams, and a Class C felony if it's more than 5 grams. But that's like an enormous amount of
that's enough fentanyl to kill all the unsheltered in Portland.
Exactly. So it's kind of absurd, but even then the Democrats are starting to admit like, this is not really that great. And they catch these guys in rural Oregon transporting this stuff all over the place. There was they found 2 pounds of powdered fentanyl and 100,000 fentanyl laced oxycodone pills on a guy who was on I-84 near La Grande, who came up from Arizona. wonder why Arizona. Isn't Arizona close to the U.S. Mexico border? I wonder if that has anything to do with it. And but they've unleashed a problem, and then aided and abetted it by almost glorifying and harm reducing the use of these, and then claiming that the solution is to spend billions of dollars on something that doesn't do anything for a person that is addicted to drugs and doesn't want to live in a house, which is a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
And they're starting to look back. They've got a new behavioral health director. That's the name for doing drugs and being mentally ill, which often are connected. Ebony Clark has promptly, after 3 years, blamed the pandemic for the reason why it's gone. The Measure 110 thing has gone so bad. It's ironic too, because Measure 110 wasn't passed until after the pandemic was well underway and was really starting to become less of a thing. It was passed in November of 2020. The pandemic was March of 2020, and they're just saying, well, the pandemic, it just made it so difficult for everything.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people stayed home and got high.
That could be. But it's like she was using it as a reason why they just can't seem to figure out how to deploy treatment and get anything done on the list of things we just said were obvious.
Yeah.
Well, in Portugal, which is the origin of the Measure 110 idea, apparently, after telling everybody that that decriminalizing drugs in Portugal, like they've done here, works, apparently these days it's not working the way they had envisioned. They said that the bleak scene in Portuguese cities is starting to look uncannily like the one in Portland. And apparently they haven't been dealing with much fentanyl yet. So they haven't even had fentanyl hit them full force in Portugal. So it's like we copied an idea from a place that it's not working, and we were told it was working. Can't somebody like at least go to jail or maybe file a class? Maybe all the homeless in Portland that are doing fentanyl and meth could file a class action lawsuit against, I don't know, the Democrat Party of Oregon and Oregon Health Authority or something, and win like $3 billion settlement because they'd be better off than what's going on right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Suing the state is a little bit difficult. I know that there are, elected people, and there are agencies that can be effectively sued, but I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that.
Sovereign immunity means unlimited sovereign stupidity is possible, and
Right.
there's no one responsible, especially if you keep voting for them. Now, they have technically banned homeless camping during the day and limited it at night in Portland. However, then as soon as the day came that they were supposed to implement this, which is supposed to be last Friday, it was supposed to go into effect last Friday. They made it clear that they weren't actually going to enforce it. Instead, what they're going to do is what they call a summer of education, rather than enforcing the new homeless camping rules. And then, so Fox News went around.
There you go. It's an education problem.
It's education. They just didn't get enough education.
Ding, 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 winner.
And so they went around and they interviewed some of the drug addicted homeless as to what they thought of this ban, and they lambasted, they ridiculed it. They said it's BS, is what one of them said. A guy who's been homeless off and on since the 90s, and said, I'm tired of moving. They're going to have to make me move. And they just made clear that they're not going to do exactly that anyway. So this is what happens when you have a legal system that doesn't mean anything, is that you pass laws, you get all this fanfare for saying, oh, finally doing something about it. And then they turn around, they interview all these people, and all these people are like, yeah, they're not doing anything. It's getting worse.
Yeah. it's a totally ineffectual response to the core and fundamental problem. I've hosted homeless people in my house. I've mentioned this before, and it became fairly clear fairly quickly that these people didn't want to be unhomeless. They didn't want to be homeful. They didn't want to be sheltered. They liked the way they lived, and that's the way they're going to live. And once we figured that out, we bought them tickets, one-way tickets to San Diego, and said, you'll be much happier being homeless in San Diego than you will be in Oregon, guaranteed. And,
well, you know what happened? Everybody else, once we started decriminalizing drugs and rewarding people for living in tents on the street and giving them drug paraphernalia, apparently every other state figured out what you just said, and now they pay for tickets to send people to Portland. Then they don't even need.
That's what I would do if they showed up in my town and I had the means to do it. I'd say, yeah, here's a bus ticket to Portland. That's a much better way. Well, maybe we should ask Larry here. Larry seems to have all the answers. Larry's a troll.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good. We attracted a troll.
Yeah.
We must be hitting
the great thing about having Larry here, though, is we're all going to change our minds, Larry, because of what you've written.
Well, maybe Larry should go and read.
It's such a compelling argument, Larry.
Yeah, maybe Larry should read this article that quotes Kevin Dahlgren, the guy we talked about before, who spent 30 years doing drug and alcohol counseling, but is an outspoken critic of what's being done in Portland and along the entire West Coast. And he said they aren't actually doing the thing that they should be doing, which is, it'd be good for the sidewalks to get clear. But he said his hope is that this results in more people actually going to do outreach with these folks, form relations with them, get them into treatment. But guess what they're not doing? They're not doing that.
Yeah, well, no, that was how it was sold to the public. We're going to spend this money on treatment facilities, and everybody's going to get, have a new lease on life. And you know what? You can have a new lease on life. And you know what? You can do it without a treatment facility, too. And you know what else? As soon as you get out of that treatment facility, they're going to tell you to go do what I and millions of other people have done. They're going to go tell you to go to a meeting with other people who just use their first name, and that's how you're going to get clean and sober, and that's how you're going to stay clean and sober.
Yep.
And it doesn't cost money. You don't need a facility. There's a meeting freaking everywhere. And really, if they wanted to do, that's how you do it. I think Angela was saying this, this as well. I like, her take on stuff. She lives in the city, and, she has a pretty good idea what's going on there. She said, you need to be out there talking to these people every day. And really, if you wanted to spend some money, that'd be a great way to spend some money to get people out there, people like me that have been clean and sober for 20 years or 5 years or even 1 year. Yeah, maybe not 1 year, but, a few years have been through it, understand it, and just go out and talk to these people and say, hey, here's, you want to go to a meeting, every day, every freaking day. And that would have more effect than all the free tinfoil and straws that you can muster.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. And that's the exact same thing that Dahlgren is saying here too. It's just, but if you don't go out and talk to them, then you're just enabling all this stuff. And that's why we have so much of it. It's a no-brainer, but no-brainers, what passes for no-brainers in Oregon? I don't know, because we don't seem to have, I don't think we have people with brains, or they're diabolical and they know they can't make billions of dollars.
They are diabolical. They are. They are. You know that they are appropriating money to give to friendlies who will shovel that money back to them when elections come around. That's been going on in Oregon for years and years and years.
Yeah, they can't make billions of dollars off of a bunch of people who recover and get clean and go back and straighten out their lives. No. It's like the medical industry. How much is a cure for cancer worth? It's worth a lot less than treating cancer. That's for sure. That's actually extremely true. Well said. Well, some of these people that are diabolical, one of them did resign, the former Secretary of State, Shemia Fagan, who's now been replaced. But she's also under federal investigation right now. And apparently, her wing girl over at the Oregon Department of Justice, Ellen Rosenblum, she and her department are whining because they're asking the feds to narrow the subpoenas in the case that they're investigating of Shemia Fagan. They are complaining that fulfilling the subpoena request would be a Herculean task for state agencies. And they go into some detail on this, but it's all centered around her relationship with LaMota's founders, Aaron Mitchell and Rosa Cazares. And apparently a lot of other people that might be wrapped up and implicated in this, which is really interesting because at this point, I guess the Oregon Government Ethics Commission that's conducting its own investigation is trying to work something out with the DOJ and the feds, because they're saying a lot of these documents will be kept confidential for 60 days from the onset of the investigation. It's a mess because apparently this is so widespread. And of course, they don't really care how much they made President Trump respond to subpoenas. They don't really care about that, right? But apparently it's too hard for an entire department whose job it is to enforce the law and maintain justice in the state of Oregon. They can't handle having their own Secretary of State that they covered for to fulfill these subpoenas. What the hell's going on? Is it a complete breakdown of justice?
It's COA.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're all covering their asses. And you know that it goes deeper than just Bobby asked for the list of people that got money from LaMota. I think Willamette Week put that list together. But it goes a lot deeper than those people. You know that. I mean, there's a lot of cash that probably didn't make it to Orstar. Right?
Bags of it, in fact.
Bags, probably. Yeah.
So, but and this is not the only person who's apparently in hot water, because really just the flip side of the same story is that there's now a TV ad that's been put out going after Congresswoman Val Hoyle, just newly minted this past election cycle, elected in the 4th congressional district. So that's a sort of South and West Oregon. And it turns out that there's a bunch of dollars that connect her, stacks of cash that connect her to this LaMota company. That was the one that got Shemia Fagan in trouble. And this is just an ad that takes the...
Well, LaMota got what, $500,000 from Boley, right? When Hoyle was commissioner of Boley.
Yep, and
they execute an apprenticeship program that couldn't be executed because they're governed by apprenticeship programs are governed by federal regulation, and weed is federally illegal.
Yes.
Nobody knew that. They're all a bunch of smart trained lawyers. Nobody could figure that out. Nobody looked at that. Probably, but hey, you give me 30,000, in Orstar, maybe another 100 on, in cash, and I'll flip you 500 grand.
And they did.
My money for like here.
Well, and so that's what happened is this is following her through the year before the election year, and they're starting to go to work on her because she's mired in this too. She was the Bureau of Labor and Industry head who was greenlighting a bunch of this kind of stuff. And so Shemia Fagan might not be the last one resigning. If she looks like she's completely dead in the water politically, then we might be heading on to something else here. So,
yeah. Well, Aaron Mitchell and Governor Tina Kotek are pickleball pals, so we know that. Pickleball pals and fancy fundraiser photo op pals.
And Ellen Rosenblum is such a standard for propriety that she had to what is the word? Recuse herself from being involved directly with the investigation. Wink, wink.
Right, right, right. And her husband's newspaper is the one that broke the story and has been hitting it hard.
Yep.
Weird.
Well, so back in
Governor Rosenblum, is that what we're looking at?
So I don't know. That's a question. Interesting.
I mean, nobody does anything in politics for no reason, right? There's always a reason.
There is always a reason, especially when it's too late to appear to be a good, clean person. Then you can't.
Yeah, and it always involves either money and or power. So I don't know. Maybe we will see the governor's office get mired up in this, and a Governor Rosenblum emerges on the horizon somewhere.
It could be. Now, the Portland city government has, in the world of wokeism, has just told staff to avoid mentioning these two forbidden terms now in their interactions with the public and within the agencies and in their the stuff that they publish. They are not allowed to mention anymore the words pregnant women or citizens, and they are removing any female aspect relating to pregnancy or breastfeeding from the language that they use. So despite the fact that we've got overwhelming crime and homelessness and addiction leading the nation, this is apparently the Office of Equity and Human Rights has now published this guide and told everybody in Portland that you have to do this. And the staffers are encouraged now to use incorrect English to get rid of he and she and just say they and them all the time.
Oh, man.
The guide says language is fluid. As our understanding of race, gender, socioeconomic status, and disability evolves, we must make informed choices about language and adopt a continuous improvement approach. There's one problem that's wrong with that. Language that's entirely fluid is useless. You can't use it to communicate, which is the point of having it. If it doesn't have some kind of relatively fixed meaning, then you can't.
Yeah. Books have been written about the relatively fixed meaning of words for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very important, particularly in legal terms. Monique will, she'll confirm that. I mean, it's kind of important, the words that you use. And I'm kind of a stickler on that too. I've got one, he doesn't work for me anymore, but this one guy used to work for me. He would just use any word or name for something, and it was rarely accurate. And I said, it's hard for us to communicate if you don't use the right word.
That's right. And they actually want to make it difficult for guys whose only job it is to fix things in the street. They have decided that the word manhole is not gender neutral and therefore must become maintenance hole. And I've got another word that ends in hole that I think describes the people that actually are coming up with this stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think everybody has one of those, by the way. And so this is where we're spending our time and our energy instead of on real problems. And by the way, we talked before about national security, how we're going to, deal with, the fact that we don't have enough artillery shells, that China's threatening Taiwan, that there's all kinds of really dangerous things that are going on in the world.
Yeah.
And it turns out
important stuff.
Really important stuff. Turns out that the guy who has been is apparently going to be or has been he's expected to be nominated by President Brandon to be the next Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman to replace General Mark White Rage Milley. This guy, his name is he's the Air Force Chief of Staff General Charles Q. Brown. And apparently he explicitly made public comments saying that in his hiring policies, he was actually using race to decide who should get hired to something. And it turns out that conflicts directly with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so there's a complaint that's been filed against him. And I'm told that this will actually indefinitely prevent him from being considered for the position as long as the investigation, which must be completed, is going on. That's just how the military rolls. And of course, it could also violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, as we learned from the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding using race for admissions at universities.
Right.
So this dude this is finally where it's come full circle. They're eating themselves. And now, and that just says everything about what's wrong about having people focus on all this crap instead of maybe so that we can
diversion,
break
deflection,
things to protect the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, look, a squirrel.
Yeah, that's right. I bet the UFO story is going to heat up again. What do you think? I mean, that's just it's been a few weeks.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I do. You know, Bobby said that I had a good eye roll. I mean, sometimes I look at digital media, and I realize that all someone has to do, Kevin, is say something on a digital media platform, and 9 out of 10 people will respond to that statement as though it is true.
Yeah.
No one asks, is this true?
Yeah, it just gets put out there, and you're like, oh, well, if it's on Twitter or if it's on, Threads, it must be true.
Yeah, and people get upset and they get pissed off, and I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it in other people. They damn near throw their phone because now they're pissed off about something that happened that didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, there's some really important future changing things that are happening out there. And nobody in the media, the globalists, nobody wants us to look at those things. They want us to be focused on Mel Gibson's 4-part documentary exposing Hollywood pedophilia, which apparently Mel Gibson forgot to tell his publicist that he's doing that 4-part documentary.
Well, and I will point out there are a couple of good developments here that we should. First of all, hats off to Josephine County commissioners. They voted narrowly 2-1 to cut funding to Oregon State University's extension program after more than a century of financial support. And the reason why they did it was because they were tired of funding what they described as the woke agenda that stifles young people's freedom of religious expression. And so they've cut the cord on these guys. And it's possible to stand up to this stuff. Josephine County is doing it. That's a great example for the rest of us to pay attention to. I even think this is another positive development. And it's because this is how it should be handled. Basic Rights of Oregon, which is the LGBTQ
2A plus minus multiplication cosine.
Exactly. So they have decided that in protest of what they said is Elon Musk's permitting vulgar insults to transgender and queer people on the platform, that they have permanently deleted their Twitter account.
Did they?
I think that's great. Yeah. I say, if that's how you feel.
Did you go check to see if they did it?
This is the story just reveals that they did it. I haven't gone to seek it yet, but it says the organization permanently deactivated its Twitter account on Friday. So last Friday. And I say more power to them, because if they don't like something, then this is what you do, right?
Yeah.
Instead of going and trying to force someone to silence everybody else that you disagree with or whose speech you don't like, you just take your ball and go somewhere else.
Yeah, hundreds or thousands or millions of people, get them to change so you can, have your way. Yeah, I'm not, I don't have a problem with that.
I think that's a good development.
Transgenderism is scientifically and biologically impossible. It is. There's no biological scientific way on earth for someone to change genders. And and the fact that you can't say that and maybe this is the one that gets us finally taken off of every platform. I don't know. The fact that you can't say that is got to make every dead second grade, third grade, sixth grade science teacher roll over in their grave.
Yeah.
If I try, I think all my science teachers, I'm old enough. My science teachers are dead. They'd laugh you out of the room.
Well, there was that professor I think in Texas.
Yeah, San Antonio Community College.
That's right. And I mean, he's being threatened with, termination because he is teaching biology that is scientifically factual.
Right.
And apparently you just file a complaint if you don't like reality, you can file a complaint against it and then it's canceled. Now, the judge, by the way, this is an important thing. The judge that issued this preliminary injunction against the federal government talking to social media and trying to get people to be censored by the social media group. That ban on doing that has been upheld. And the judge cited some specific examples of where this is being done and where the government apparently has caused harm. In fact, but the government then tried to claim that irreparable harm was being done to the government. You can't make this stuff up.
The government needs irreparable harm.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a lot.
The price of our freedom, then yes.
It needs harm done to it that it cannot be repaired because it is too big, too bloated, too powerful, and it has become tyrannical.
Well, that just makes you an insurrectionist, David. How dare you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. We celebrated some insurrectionists just not too long ago, 6 days ago, and that was it was a violent insurrection against the mightiest military force on the face of the earth, and freedom and liberty won, and now we have a society that is just can't step over itself fast enough to relinquish that liberty and relinquish that freedom.
Well, our last mention here is actually while we're all focused on this and trying to make sure that we fight for and defend our freedom, we've had some bad news, we've had some good news. Here's what's happening in China. Chinese kindergartners, and this is Michael Yan who put this forward. Chinese kindergartners received combat and weapons training. They're receiving it from the People's Liberation Army. Meanwhile, the U.S. military, 1911. That's right. And meanwhile, the U.S. military is promoting transgenderism and LGBTQ plus culture and conducting training in critical race theory and pronouns. They're going to end up with better trained kindergartners than we are full-on soldiers if this keeps up. And this is serious stuff. This is
serious stuff.
Not kindergarten.
It is serious stuff. I mean, it harkens back to that saying, that how does it go? That hard men, I forget how it goes, but I mean, we've created such a society that it's so plush and so easy and so cushy that no one's willing to raise a finger to save it. And it's just going by the wayside. You think China doesn't have any problem killing people. Russia doesn't have any problem killing people.
No.
And what makes you think they wouldn't try to kill us given the opportunity? I've long held it wouldn't make any strategic sense for Russia or particularly China to try to, invade and conquer the United States of America. But, Hitler wasn't real logical either, so.
No, that's why you actually have to be so well prepared and ready to defend yourself, peace through strength, that no one would even consider moving and attacking you. But we're literally advertising weakness.
And the biggest deterrent has always been, for people attacking America is, a rifle, as a Japanese emperor said, a rifle behind every bush. We've got 400 million firearms in the hands of more than 100 million people, and an invading army. I mean, because you can fight nuclear wars, you can fight air wars, but if you want to conquer a country, you have to go door to door. That's how all wars end. That's how all occupations begin, is by vanquishing your enemy door to door. That's just a hard thing to do in America. And let's hope that America stays that way.
Armed and ready to protect ourselves since 1776. That's what we just.
Yeah.
That was an armed group.
It was an armed group, and I read. I didn't do the show with you. I think I did it with Sunny the day after. I read 3 or 4 hours on the 4th, and I was just enthralled by the way that the Revolutionary War was started. And it was started, about almost a year and a half before the Declaration of Independence.
Yes.
And it was started with a small group of people in a town square, like 50 or 60 people with guns. They just kind of gathered there because they knew the English army was going to come in and try to find some stashes of guns. Well, they knew they were coming, so they moved the guns around. And next thing you know, somehow, some way, somebody fired a shot and the war was on. And within 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, that 60 people had swelled to 4,000 people on our side. Without social media, without
Concord, right?
Without radios, without all that stuff. Yeah. And it's interesting how people were willing to, leave their farm, leave their store, leave wherever they were working and go take up arms, risk being killed.
Fight for freedom.
Anymore.
Well, that's a great way to finish our show here today, David. I think that no, neither one of us left that Coke in the White House, and we'll see if we get to the truth on that one.
Yeah.
I think
who the hell leaves their Coke? I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic and a druggie. I liked cocaine, right? I haven't done it for 22 years, but you don't leave your Coke somewhere. It's like leaving half a beer. What kind of psycho leaves a half of a beer, or half of a drink, or half of a margarita? That's psychotic.
Well, we gave everybody everything today. This was one hell of a program, and I hope everybody shares it with everyone they can, because it was packed, and we laid it out there.
Thanks to Larry for stopping by to tell us how stupid and dumb we are.
Yeah, thanks, Larry, and thanks to all of you for watching us. And please do share the show with everyone you can. We will see you tomorrow night on the next episode of The Captive Audience, and have a good one.